I'm Mary Louise Ford. I lived across the street from where I am now at 212 Scriven Street. It's the house that's right next to the museum where it is now, located now. I wasn't born in that house. I was born on Prince Street. It's a little cottage that I was told that's where I was born. But we moved in the house on Scriven when I was 2, so that's always was home. And I lived there until I got married. And loved living there. It was a big old, mother used to say, barn of a house, but my sisters and I loved it. We had the whole upstairs, and she and Daddy had a bedroom downstairs. And we had plenty of room to play and court. We had 2 porches. I have 2 older sisters. We were stair steps. I was the youngest of the 3. Anytime I try to recall something, they'll say, "Oh, you're too young to remember that." And I'm all of 2 years younger than one and 4 years younger than the other. But we did have a good time growing up. Living in Georgetown. I look back on it now and I think how fortunate we were. A small town with so many loving people to care for us. We were in a neighborhood where we had friends and we played in our yard, we played in their yard. We could run across the street, we could ride our bicycles anywhere we wanted to go. I think about it now, we used to ride our bicycles out to Rosemont, where Martha and Sarah Parker's family owned that property. We could ride our bicycles over to Bayview, across the bridge. Isn't that amazing that we could do that? Can you imagine parents even being able to allow their children to do that nowadays? We were so carefree, and we'd pack a lunch and have a little picnic, and back home we'd come. Safe as could be, you know, no problem at all. What wonderful days they were. The Masons had that building. And I'll have to tell you, maybe I shouldn't tell this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My sisters and I had the upstairs, as I mentioned, and of course we had no air conditioning in those days, and our windows were up all the time. And I don't know a whole lot about the Masons, but I do have learned since, after reading and so forth, that they have certain rites that they go through to become full Masons. And their upstairs was used apparently for some of their things that they went through to become that. And my sisters and I would go up, we were upstairs, and we'd hear all this stuff going on next door, and they had their windows up, and boy, we'd get at our window, and it was my sister Sarah's room that was over on that side, and we'd get over there and we'd just look, and we couldn't believe all the things we saw going on. Never did understand what was going on, but we knew it was different from anything we'd ever seen before. Oh my. you know, little girls are just, at that time, we were so innocent and didn't have any knowledge about such as that. But of course, nowadays, a child would get on the internet and find out what was going on, I presume. Oh, I got married very early. My Jeep was in the service. He signed up for the Navy. He wanted to get in that war and, as he says, kill some Japs. He just absolutely. We were very patriotic. When the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor, we frankly did not know where Pearl Harbor was. Took an afternoon for us to find out it was in Hawaii. But when we found out, all our boys who were in high school, we were in our upper grades in high school, were just absolutely furious, every one of them. I'm going to sign up tomorrow. Well, of course, they weren't old enough to sign up tomorrow. But when Jeep turned 18, he was in Porter Military Academy in Charleston. And when he turned 18, he begged his mother and daddy to let him sign up for the Navy because he knew he was going to be drafted. He said he didn't study hard enough for his grades to be perfect. And at that time, they were drafting 18-year-olds. So he went in the Navy. And we graduated from high school when we were 16 then. And I graduated from high school and I went to Salem College. In Winston-Salem, I was majoring in music. And so that's where I went. And so he went on, as I say, he was in the Navy. I finished my high school. You know, I was still in high school when he went in the Navy. But I graduated from high school, and then I went on to college. And when he got out of the Navy while I was still in college, and I don't know, he was stationed in Washington. He'd come over to college to see me, and we'd start talking about getting married. And I don't know, I just thought, why am I in college? I want to get married. And he says, you know, oh no, you probably ought to finish college. And we would talk about it, and I said, no, I don't want to get married. I want to get married. And so we eloped. And oh my goodness, that wasn't exactly the thing my mom and daddy expected of me. But anyway, I did it. And I never regretted it for 1 minute.
What year was that?
In 1946. A long time ago, and I was young, but as I say, I've never regretted it. We dated in high school. We were dating when he went in the war. I mean, you know, well, I guess I had my first date with him when I was 14 years old. We went to a birthday party. He said it was a hayride. I said, no, it's a birthday party. He said, we went to the birthday party. I asked you to go to the birthday party, and then you asked me to go to the hayride, and that's when you held my hand. I said, I didn't hold your hand, you held my hand. And we're still arguing about that, 65 years later. We built this house in 1950 when our second child was just a baby. And we have 3 wonderful children. A daughter, who was our firstborn, and she lives in Winston-Salem. She's a medical technologist, but then decided to go in the insurance business with her husband. And she has a daughter, my beautiful granddaughter, who's a doctor in Asheville. And she has a daughter whom I love, a great-granddaughter. Isn't that wonderful? She's beautiful and smart. And I laughed because my granddaughter was not prissy at all. And I used to carry her pretty little dresses, and she could have cared less. She was sort of a tomboy at one time. And her daughter is just the opposite, so things do work out. And then we have a middle son, Jeepy, Francis Bell Ford Jr., that I had hoped maybe somebody'd call him Francis or Frank or something, but no, he came home from school writing Jeepy. He has a son who's Francis Bell Ford III, and so now he's Jeep. And so we have Papa Jeep, Jeepy, and Jeep. It's fun to get them all together. He got it from Popeye, the little animal. We have one that our other grandson found, and I was so delighted that he found a little Jeep for my Jeep. But it was Eugene the Jeep. And when he was a little boy at Ford's store, his father owned that store. He was able to find things that the men who worked there couldn't find. And they'd say, well, get Eugene the Jeep to find it. And then it got shortened to the Jeep. And then it just stuck. By the time he started school, everybody was calling him the Jeep. He has another name, Pete, and he has a daughter named Stella. And then our youngest son, Joel, who has retired as city planner of Mount Pleasant, last 30 years. And he has one son named Philip. I took music education, but I had studied the piano all my life, all through my high school. I did teach piano, and then I taught music education for a few years after my children started to school. Until I'd have a throat operation, and now I don't sing at all. I was not a performer. I've never been a performer. I've never liked to perform. I loved to play the piano. That was my instrument, you know, but only more as an accompanist for people to sing and enjoy. My father established that business 85 years ago. Of course, it's closed now, thanks to, well, I won't say thanks to what it was, but everybody knows. If you talk to my husband for 5 minutes, you'll know all about it. This is where my sisters would say I was too young to remember. But one thing I have thought about so many times, I had a little red tricycle. And I remember I was riding my tricycle out in front of the house. So I had to be, 4 or 5. And I remember Daddy coming home in the morning. And that was so unlike him to come home from work. He worked very hard. He really worked as a mechanic under the cars. You know, those were really tough times, and he established the business. So he was the business. He only had one other man that worked with him. But anyway, he came home, and I remember him I said, "Hey, Daddy," you know, like little girls always do, and ran up to him, and he said, he just patted me a little bit, and he said, he didn't say anything, he just patted me, and he went on by, and he was a big, tall man with long legs, and he just hurried in the house. Well, of course, I followed, and he was saying, "Mary, Mary," calling Mother. And it was the sound of his voice, and I heard Mother say, "Joe, what's wrong?" So, you know, you pick up on those things, and I've remembered that. And he said, "Oh, honey, we've lost everything." And when I think about that now, I realize that's what happened that day. And it took me a long time to recall that memory. But it has come back to me since I've been thinking about the Depression. And this has happened to us. When my son and my husband said we've had to close up. Well, I know we didn't get a lot of pretty dresses. Mother loved to dress her little girls. We didn't get a lot of pretty dresses at all, and we coped. Everybody coped. Everybody helped everybody.
Everybody in the same boat?
You just did what you had to do. That part I don't remember. I know we never went hungry. You know, I know we never went hungry, but we probably ate things, a lot of the things that didn't cost a lot of money. Yes, and that was his family. But then later, because there were so many of them, he went in business with my daddy. That's how that happened.
Okay, what year?
He had a brother and a brother-in-law and 3 cousins. One of the cousins didn't go in the store, but 2 of them did. So that made a lot of, besides his, you know, other people that worked there. So it was very difficult for a man with 3 children to make a living. Oh, goodness. He, as he said, when he started working for Dad, Daddy picked up his golf clubs and started playing golf. And we all had houses at Paulus Island in a row. It was a regular little Georgetown community there. And we used to have most fun in the summertime because Georgetown group would all go to Paulus and have just wonderful time with the neighbors. We did. Probably shouldn't have. We sold before the places over there turned to gold. But our children had grown up, married, and gone. One son lived at Sullivan's Island. He didn't come to Paulus. The other son lived over at Debbadoo. He didn't come to Paulus Island. And my daughter still hadn't forgiven us because she would love to have had a beach house, but she lived in Winston-Salem and was working. Only a very occasionally could she come down for a weekend. And I didn't need 2 houses that close together. And so many of the neighbors had either sold their houses or rented or something. Anyway, it was just a time in our lives where we didn't see 2 houses. Jeep got tired of getting ready for hurricanes. We sold, actually the man had, who bought it, had asked to buy it before Hugo. And then Hugo came. And our house, surprisingly, nothing happened to it. We lost maybe the heating system under the house. That was all, and maybe a shingle off the roof. But really no harm came to it. And so he was delighted to go ahead and buy it. And so he did. Well, I will say this. Some of them have been very good. I think our friends that have moved in from other places have brought such a wonderful freshness to Georgetown that we needed. Because I think when you live in a place so long and you have a history that goes so many hundreds of years back, you just get kind of stuck with that. Of course, my mother and daddy came to Georgetown as young marrieds, so we don't have a historical background as so many of my friends have had. You know, they say if you're not born in Georgetown, you're not a Georgetonian. Well, I was, so I can claim that. But Mother said she could never be a Georgetonian because she wasn't born here. But she was very proud of coming from North Carolina. So it didn't matter to her that she wasn't a Georgetonian, you know. But anyway, I do think our community has really benefited from the people that have come in, because they've brought a lot of new ideas, new concepts of what the community can become. I do think that Georgetown's a wonderful place. I think one of the jobs I did that I really felt like made a difference, I was asked by the mayor, and at that time it was Doug Hines, if I would start the Keep America Beautiful program. And I said, Doug, I don't know if I can do that or not. And he said, well, why not? And I said, I don't know, I just don't know if I can do it. And he said, well, why don't you try? And I said, well, I will. And at the time, I wasn't really, I'd done garden club work, but I wasn't at that time. Our garden club had kind of fallen apart. So I said, okay, I'll try. And he said our sanitation department would help. His name was Rufus Green. He would help. And he said, so we'll just let you get it started and get a committee and so forth. So we started and got a committee. And then it was so that they would allot some money. And there was a young man that came as a consultant, and there was a meeting in Atlanta, and the city would pay for us to go. So I was going to Atlanta and to the Keep America Beautiful program. And I told my daughter and the children I was going, and they said, you're going to Atlanta with all those men? And I said, yep, don't you think it'll be all right? So anyway, we went, and I loved the program. It was just wonderful. So we came back, and we got it started in Georgetown, and it really did make a difference. We got it in the school, and June Swedberg was just one of the most wonderful ones, and she still, bless her heart, she's out at Morningside, but if she was able, she'd still be out doing something. I gave up after about 10 or 12 years. We just worked hard and had all these different committees and started with the anti-litter program, and I just really felt like that was an accomplishment. And the litter in Georgetown really, really started disappearing. And so if I didn't do anything else, I felt like that was one of the things I had worked at and felt like I'd done a little bit to help the community. I think I was awfully sorry when the city knocked that off their agenda. But anyway, maybe they'll get it back. I do. I've lost so many of my classmates. My dearest friend, Jane Woodcock Williams Wallace, who died last year, has just been a hole in my heart for the whole year. But her daughter is my adopted daughter now, and she just saw her just last weekend. She was down, and we claim her as our other little daughter, so that helps. I'm afraid I wasn't very active at that time because it was about that time that I started teaching school as a substitute teacher to fill a place where a teacher had moved away. And so I was going to teach full-time, but I also had piano students and 3 children and a husband. And I remember some of the people that were there, like Elizabeth Ashford and her sister Bertie, and Dr. Bell, who was my husband was named for. You know, he was such a wonderful historian. The only spanking I ever got was because I went down to the waterfront. Ooh, my only spanking I got from my daddy. We were not allowed down there. Now, when you want to hear about the waterfront, Jeep Ford is full of waterfront stories. He lived down there. But my daddy did not allow his little girls down there. The wharves were rotten, he said. He was afraid we'd drown, I think. But we had an older cousin from North Carolina. He was, you know, big boy. And at that time, I guess you could swim in the river because we didn't have international paper or, of course, a steel mill. So he had friends in Georgetown because he came to visit frequently. And they all went down to the river to go swimming. And he took me with him, took my sisters and me. I was the youngest one. And we just had a delightful time. I couldn't swim, but he looked after me, I guess, because I didn't drown. But when Daddy found out we had gone, he gave him a tongue lashing and he gave us a paddling. And boy, did I cry. I was so upset my daddy had spanked me. Oh, gracious. I didn't go back in the river anymore for a long time. I do remember, and I remember how excited we were to have new children coming to town. And when we went to school that fall, there were so many boys and girls that we'd never met before. It was very exciting to have new friends. And they became our friends and were a part of our gangs, not gangs in the sense of the word now, but our buddies. We played together, and they boys played football together, and on the lots that where that Jewish temple was a vacant lot, and that's where boys loved to get up a game of football or baseball, and we girls would bother them. And flirt with them, I guess, I don't know. But it really changed our community to have an influx of people. But the people who came with International became a part of the community. They joined our churches. They contributed to the clubs. They even started some of the clubs. You know, if there wasn't we'll say there wasn't a Lions Club, they would get one going, and did a lot of good work in that respect. And it wasn't long before they weren't referred to as mill people, they were people. She was beautiful, and you know, Georgetown has never been a community that we've just not had a lot of Jewish people, and Betty was Jewish, is Jewish, and yet she just never was a part of the Jewish community that was here. Well, there weren't many of them except Debbie Abrams was the only other, and she was beautiful too. Debbie Abrams taught us in high school. Debbie had just graduated from college, and we were seniors, and I was a junior in high school, and she came and taught business, and I was taking typing. She was the best looking thing you ever saw, and the boys gave her a fit. Miss Baruch, would you give me a date tonight? Turn around in your desk and stop that. She'd say. She could handle them all right. Oh my, but she was so lovely. But she was a very good teacher too. So she and Betty were really the two beautiful women that came about that same time, and they became good friends. And then there were a lot of other in that age group. They were really war brides, a lot of them. She couldn't go to college because at that time his dad was sick and his Uncle Ralph was not well. So he had to go to work in the store. So he didn't get to use his GI Bill, but I doubt that he would have anyway, because at that time we had our little Mary Lou. So we were ready to just settle down and be a family. And as I say, I've never regretted it, and he says he hadn't either. We've had a wonderful life. I had a wonderful childhood. And I can't stop without saying how important my church has been to me. I was so fortunate to have Duncan Methodist as my church. We've had wonderful pastors. Most of them have been really friends and inspirations. But besides that, there have been so many wonderful people that have been inspirations to me. Miss Isabel Mayer, who just died, was my special mentor for so many years. She just always encouraged me from the time she came to town, actually. She was so beautiful. She always wore her hair in a bun. She never cut it until I'd say in the last 10 years. She always wore it up, and she looked so distinguished, and she spoke with such beautiful diction and had such wonderful, beautiful thoughts. And her notes, I was putting something up today, and it was a note she wrote Jeep and me on our anniversary in June this year. And I couldn't help but get a tear in my eye because she died very soon after that. But there were so many in the church that inspired me and gave me encouragement, and I was just so fortunate. To be a downtown church, it's hard to get new members because the suburbs have the children. The young people tend to go to church where their children go to school, which makes sense. We don't have a school in town anymore, so that makes it difficult. But we do attract, we had a baptism yesterday, so, which always pleases you to have a new little body. So, Tom Yawkey was more, he came to Ford Store all the time. And Mr. Huntington was more our person of interest in our family. He helped my daddy so much. Daddy drove him. He would pick him up in Lane, South, from the train and drive him to Brook Green. And then he would furnish him with drivers when he was there. And my granddaddy did a lot of work at Brook Green for him, and Daddy and his brother helped put the electricity over there. But Mr. Huntington really, he advised Daddy so much and gave him so much advice in business, and he was a wonderful man. He was so generous to us. And our wonderful Dr. Bell, who was my husband's uncle.
Dr. Bell was?
Yes, Jeep was named for Dr. Bell, Francis Bell Ford. That's where the Bell came from. He served on the Board of Trustees of Brook Green. She and my aunt, Miss Bell, were correspondents. They went to New York to the trustee meetings and had dinner with them.